A win, a loss, and now a draw against Harrogate Town, and a thoroughly mixed bag of a start for Neil Harris's United leaves us 14th in League Two. I suppose it could be worse, and we could be rock bottom of League One with no points and only one goal scored. But I guess we can debate that in a second. Welcome to Under the Abbey Stand. My name is Matt Casper. I'm hosting today, joined by an all-star panel as always. Firstly, Jack Swindlehurst. Hello, mate.
Hi there, nice to be here. It's my first kind of review pod of the season, and there's plenty to dissect from Saturday's game for sure.
Oh, very good. And also joining us always, of course, your friend of mine. He's delayed this pod recording by about 6 or 7 hours. His name is Tom Walker.
What else are you going to do on a Sunday? Yeah. Sorry, chaps. That'll mean nothing to anyone listening, but yeah, I've ruined both your Sundays. So,
well, Tom, I mean, take us back to the start of the day, I guess. Obviously, fantastic opportunity to plug our new sponsors for this season, the Old Spring Pub. Do get down there as part of the sponsorship that they're offering, a great Matchday Meal Deal. So before every game, get £15 for either burger, fish and chips, or skepasti. Are we supposed to pretend that we know what skepasti is? I'm not looking.
It's like a Greek quesadilla was the chat on the Thursday pod.
Fantastic. Okay, that plus any beer. How exciting. And then there's a happy hour after the games as well, from 5:30 to 6 to 8 p.m. half price beers. Saw a few people tagged us on X in amongst all the other great content to tell us that they had taken advantage of that offer. There's also a ticket holder discount, so 10% off anytime with a Cambridge United season ticket or match ticket this week or next. Excludes the Matchday Meal Day and the happy hours. You can't get 10% off at already half price, but it's all pretty good stuff. We had a good time at the Old Spring, Tom, eh?
Yeah, loved it, mate. We're now officially in the pocket of Big Pub, which is been a long time coming, I think. No, it's great. Yeah, obviously joined by Mark Green as well. Yeah, had a good afternoon, didn't we? Well, we had a good start to the afternoon, I'll say.
We did set you up for the day by all accounts, which is why we're recording so late on this Sunday, Tom. Cool. All right. Let's get into it. Let's talk about Harrogate Town, shall we? If we must. Tom, why don't you kick us off? Your thoughts on the game? Just unabridged thoughts.
Yeah, it was quite frustrated coming out of the ground, I'll say. It was a real, I really hate to use like a real classical cliche, but I think a bit of a game of two halves, really. We were beyond dominant in the first half, and we were chatting at half time. We were like, it can't be this easy. Like surely there's a sting in the tail at some point, and you thought obviously we get ourselves ahead, and 2, 3, 4 really good opportunities go without us taking one of the chances, and you're kind of seeing this one before. It feels like a bit of a rerun of an episode that we've seen millions of times, sort of over again. And then second half was just so sloppy. And we give away a pretty cheap goal, and you're thinking Harrogate are level here, and they've done nothing. They've contributed absolutely nothing to the football match, and somehow they're level, and you're like, we should have been out of sight at half time. And yeah, it was really frustrating. I think the most annoying thing was towards the end of the game, and you're like 6 minutes stoppage time and stuff. Don't really think we tested them at all. Like we felt like we had a lot of the ball, we had a lot of pressure, and or it felt like pressure was building, but without really doing much with it. And the first half, I think, in fairness to us, we did create a lot of opportunities, but when the pressure was really on, and we really need to kind of attack a team that were clearly fairly happy with the point, we couldn't quite make it tell. Some players showing similar signs from last season, ineffectual at times, a couple of them. But you know what? We said it after the game, and we said it so many times during our stay in League One. If you can't win a game of football, just make sure you don't lose it. And look, we're probably going to come across being mega negative here, because it was a really frustrating afternoon. Coming out of the Abbey felt like a defeat, really. But we haven't lost the game. It's a point on the board, and there's positives in there, I think, that we can hopefully build on. But when you look at the week ahead, and you go to Colchester and you go to Bristol Rovers, who surely won't be as bad as they were on Tuesday night, you do kind of feel like Harrogate Town at home is your opportunity to put down a bit of a marker. And chance missed, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, Swindle, we were going over some of these numbers just before the pod, but 1.48 XG from the first half with 10 shots, 4 of which on target, 6 corners, 58% possession. Kind of speaks to real dominance, right? I mean, by contrast, Harrogate, I think, barely had a shot in that entire half. They're just completely contained. Is it as easy to say that with a new striker, maybe someone like Harry Smith, maybe we've put the game, completely beyond them by half time?
Yeah, I would think so. I think, Appere did really well to get, in the right place at the right time to score again, but he definitely should have scored a second in that half. I think there was a class save from their keeper. Julian spoke to the Harrogate podcast in the week, and they, earmarked their keeper as probably their best player, and he pulled off an absolute worldie save to keep it out the top corner. But I think there was more than enough from Cambridge United to be more than 2 or 3-0 up at half time and the game be beyond Harrogate. I think Harrogate had so little to show. Had they been 2 goals down, I think they would have come out and wouldn't have had much to muster. But we just didn't have that cutthroat kind of mentality that we needed. I think we're still carrying that over from last season, a bit of a hangover of not being able to kind of deliver in front of goal. We still do it all game. It's so frustrating to see us not shooting when we have an opportunity to shoot. Players like Brophy, who does so well, kind of sticking at it. There was a couple of times it opened up for him and he chose to try and thread a pass through rather than shoot, and then at the time when he did, and it went over, I think you have to kind of forgive him that, because he's trying to do what people are asking him to do. And again, Appere had the ball on the edge of the box in the second half and just kind of indecision took over. So I think we are lacking that kind of goal scoring cutthroat mentality, and I'm still very frustrated by it yesterday. I think massive chance missed. I know it's the 3rd game into the season, but we also look back to the game at Swindon and we've thrown that away really with a bit of kind of naivety. And I think you add that with a home game against Harrogate. It's a long season, but 2 games that looked like they could have been winnable, and points gained are one thing, but it's going to be a long old season. And 4 points from the first 3, quite a lot of disappointment. And they're beating a Cheltenham side who look utterly beatable by everyone else. Got pumped 5-0 yesterday, suddenly beating them 1-0 on the opening day looks like job done. But had we somehow nicked it yesterday, I think we could have, papered over a few cracks. But I think we're quite exposed, and I think our lack of depth is very much exposed at the moment and could be a problem for us in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. I mean, Tom, I know it's 3 games in and we've got to temper everything we say by saying the transfer window is still open. There's lots of stuff that can still happen. But I think Swindle's kind of touched on it there, but 3 league games so far, not much to be convinced by yet. If you're looking at us and you're thinking like, should we be considering top 3? Should we be thinking at least about the playoffs? Got a little bit of work to do, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, we've got to try not be too downbeat about it, because there is a fairly believable alternative universe in which we're sat here having just beaten Harrogate like 4-0 yesterday. If we're a little bit more clinical in front of goal, we're sat here 3 points, 6 all season. You're probably thinking about it's a pretty good start, including obviously a decent win away at Rovers in the cup. But having said that, that's almost the argument right there, isn't it? We could be sat here talking about it, but we're not, because I think there's still little bits to do. Clearly, we're going to need a centre forward, like obviously. I think Appere's got so many qualities, but playing up front on his own is not really for me, to be honest. I think he's crying out for somebody next to him. Even at points yesterday, you're like, God, you'd kill to have Ryan Loft on the pitch at some point. And
yeah,
concerningly, like, I didn't think I'd be saying that, 3 games into the season. But obviously he needs some help up there. I'm not really sure the right players are at the club, so we're going to have to go out and sign somebody there. And I think probably a winger as well, because I think Kai's great, and I think at this level he's starting to look very, very comfortable, but he can't do it all. And I think again, just a bit of help, just something a little bit different, because I agree with what Swindle was saying there about not taking opportunities to shoot, and at times I think out wide we can look a little bit static. It's just kind of like they get in a good position, turn back, then the sort of play happens again. So yeah, and I've said it until I'm blue in the face, but I think a good centre back as well is something that'd be right at the top of my shopping list. But I've kind of accepted that we're just not going to go out and get that. It might be Job, to be fair. Obviously, you kind of forget about him. But my point is more along the lines of, is it sensible to rely on a 19, 20-year-old lad, or sort of however old he is, early 20s, should we say, who's coming back from potentially the worst injury you can get as a professional footballer? Is it sensible to be putting so much reliance on him and like Kel Watts, who's, to be fair, was okay on Saturday against Harrogate, but I think it's fair to say jury is still very much out. So yeah, there's little bits to do, and the frustrating thing is, it does feel like we're not a million miles away. Because, I mean, against Harrogate on Saturday, it could have clicked. Like if if Belshaw doesn't quite get up to the McLaughlin chance, or Appere's sort of sort of glancing touch goes the right side of the post rather than going wide, we probably do go on and win that game really, really easily. But yeah, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, the fact that it's not is kind of the argument in itself, isn't it? But yeah, we'll have to kick on.
Mate, let me hit you with something that is going to raise all the eyebrows. So our top-rated player this season by the numbers, FOTMob, is Kel Watts, which don't know how that's possible.
I'm like, I've never known a player at this sort of level to have such like an iconic move as his little
this
thigh
thigh
back to goal.
That little thigh when he basically was just thighing it where he really couldn't or shouldn't be thighing it.
He did it on Tuesday at Bristol Rovers. He did it, I reckon, about 5 or 6 times against Harrogate, and like every time I was like, I'm looking forward. Well, not looking forward to it, but I can see a moment here where he just slightly misjudges it and just loops over Eastwood. Yeah.
Over Eastwood, you think? A backfired own goal, a loopy one.
Because that'd look mental as well. That'd look absolutely insane.
I mean, Kel Watts, obviously, I thought he did play quite well, and he had a big role in the goal as well. Some other good performances out there. So Don Ball, I thought, looked really, really well put together, really spread the ball about well. We got to shout out the Labrador, right? Louis Appere. I know you're very keen to make this Labrador chat stick, Tom, so I'm all in on that with you. I guess, did anyone else stand out, swindle to you? Like, is it a Ball, Watts, Labrador? That's the 3?
Not really, in all honesty. I think Eastwood didn't have much to do, and the goal was from about 10 yards out, and would struggle to save that. I think there were some players who stood out for me for very much the wrong reason. I don't want to dwell too much on it early season, but I really do think we were carrying some players yesterday on Saturday, that we couldn't really afford to. But I think,
do you want to name names, Swindle? Do you want to name names?
I'm happy to name names. Yeah, Ben Purrington, I thought, had a really poor game. He looked slow. He looked sluggish. He looked like he wasn't quite up to it, and that left-hand side was exposed for the goal, and the whole way kind of through. I think the whole way through the game, it's certainly in the second half. I think Ben Knight really didn't have his best game. I pointed out a few times when whoever was playing right back, whether it be Bennett or Gibbons, had the ball, he seemed to find himself directly behind a defender, not looking for the ball, but quite the opposite, being kind of an invisible man, not being an outlet for the defence, but also not being an outlet for when the ball would come into the middle. When Pelly came on and Brophy started running about, that kind of seemed to scare Ben Knight away, and he was anonymous for most of the game. And there's been a lot of chat about him having trained with the world's best and being one of those who should really come in and make it his own. And at the moment, he looks like he's either a bit scared to or not quite at the races yet. And then I think there's been a lot of talk about Elias Kachunga, and I think there will continue to be. There was some choice words from many people in the crowd. It's clear that he has used up a little bit of the good faith that was there. In his early days in Cambridge United, he did a fantastic job, and I think he got on the score sheet, top scorer last season, whatever. But you need to bring something to the table. Like, you can't be there coming on at that crucial time in the game. In a game we wanted to win, we shouldn't be looking at that game thinking, okay, that's a point gained. It's 2 dropped, especially from the first half performance. You bring on Kachunga, you need him to make a difference. And he was kind of less than anonymous, and it's not the first time it's happened this season. And I can kind of understand people's frustrations with him and the wider frustration at the end. There was some light booing, and I think people are allowed to be frustrated. We endured 46 absolutely awful games last season. We endured 46 pretty awful ones the season before and just about survived. But there's been a lot of talk from the club about changing kind of attitudes, a rebuild, rebrand. We're all coming forward. Everyone's in it together. There's no kind of passengers here. And yesterday it looked like there was probably, if not more than last season. And, sadly, Kachunga coming on at such a crucial time and having such a prominent role going forward. If you're not, throwing yourself about and, chasing every ball down, then it's massively obvious. And, yeah, we can't afford to be, entertaining players like that.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Tom, you'll get your shot at Kachunga later, mate. Let's do this and let's go chronological with it. Let's wind it back. Another goal for Louis the Labrador. Opportunism from him again, but again, right place, right time. I mean, he's a couple of yards out. It was a really good header from Kel Watts in the build-up, and it's a set-piece goal for us. They feel quite rare, but I actually thought we were a bit of a threat from the set pieces yesterday. Just good to see Apre at least in amongst the goals early on, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I think when he came in, I think a lot of the chat was, willing runner, Labrador, all that sort of stuff. But if you're looking for someone who's a bit of a poacher and is going to basically be in the right place at the right time and score goals regularly, he's probably not your man. Well, I mean, his 3 goals so far, it's been like, pretty impressive, really. Nothing out of the ordinary. We're not talking like 25-yard perlers, but I think his goal against Cheltenham is exactly that. He's just like Johnny on the spot. He's on the line, just ready to tap it in. This goal at Bristol Rovers is a really clinical finish, and obviously against Harrogate, like you say, good header from Watts, but Apere's done what all good number 9s do, and he's just like sort of anticipating and he's in the right place at the right time, and it's a pretty straightforward finish in the end, isn't it? But he deserves it through simply being in the right place, and I guess a willingness to make things happen. He's kind of sliding away from the goal a little bit, but I just think, generally speaking, I think his performance has been really encouraging. And yeah, I mean, it does feel a little bit like he needs someone next to him to really unlock him a little bit more, because it feels like he's doing a lot of hard yards and in a role and sort of playing on his own, which I don't know, maybe time will tell a different story, but to me, it doesn't feel mega suited to it. So yeah, good to have another goal. It's we've spent, it feels like, every week for the last like 3 or 4 years talking about centre forwards, how we desperately need more quality. We desperately need strikers to contribute. So, 4 games in, you've got a striker who's already scored 3 goals, which is, not a million miles off what our top scorer was scoring last season. And you have to say it's a pretty positive sign.
Yeah, just need to get a strike partner in so we can let him off the leash. Hey, go on the Labrador.
Swindle, to be one of my favourite football nicknames. This, I love it.
Just somehow there was a Rangers fan behind us at the game, which is obviously the Labrador chat kind of winds back to Peter Lovenkrands, and he was loving it. So you've got one other person on board at least from Saturday.
It makes a change, doesn't it? Having someone's like, what those guys are saying, really interesting, really funny.
Funny, engaging and interesting.
So I'll be honest with you, normally our content is sort of 20 to 4 on a Saturday afternoon is much, much worse. So good to someone enjoy.
Normally quite polarizing, eh? Swindle, big clash between Michael Morrison and our beast of a keeper, Jake Eastwood. Mamadou Job comes on. Obviously, Sally Kai also off injured. Bit of a concern now about even just numbers ahead of Tuesday and then Saturday as well.
Yeah, I mean, even before Saturday's game, we were talking about how we felt a bit light and options were minimal. And someone like Morrison, his experience carries through a lot, but also kind of the way he kind of dominates that half of the pitch and can kind of keep the younger players in tow and good communication with Eastwood. I think very sadly the thing that happened with Eastwood was just, one of those things that does happen. Eastwood has to come and claim it, has to kind of, make sure he gets that ball safe and goes through whoever. And sadly, Morrison was kind of facing, the brunt of Eastwood, who is an absolute unit. So yeah, rather Michael Morrison than me. But yeah, I think that's a worry. I think Job is a really good replacement, but we are, Tom's already referenced this as a young man who's done his ACL very recently and, had a big kind of layoff with the whole Chris Martin thing as well. So yeah, we need to be careful with Job and need to take care of him. So, Saturday, Tuesday isn't going to be an option, indefinitely, I don't think. And then, yeah, Kai going off is a massive concern because, he didn't have his best game on Saturday, but has been brilliant so far this season and is probably going to be one of the key players for us, certainly, in that forward area. So yeah, it's a massive concern. It might be a kind of total rejig where, we saw Liam Bennett play further forward on the right. in the week, and it may well have to happen again just because of lack of kind of logistical options. So yeah, we really shouldn't be sitting here kind of basically 4 weeks into the season saying we still need this, because we've been here before, and everyone kind of harps on about the transfer window still being open, but really I think we know that, you know, teams are best made when they, you know, you've had a pre-season together and you can hit the ground running at the start of the season, not, you know, 4 games in. And presumably some of these players who might come in will not have had a pre-season, or, you know, be not quite match fit, and we can't really afford that. You know, we've kind of played this fiddle of being, you know, unlucky with injuries in past seasons. And I think whilst that might be true, I think every team in a 46 game season has injuries. I think we just have less squad depth and have left ourselves bare season after season. And lo and behold, it's already happening again. So yeah, hopefully somebody at that backroom level and Neil Harris can put their heads together and get a couple more names through the door.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely. I mean, let's get some, you know, loan signings, Prem, whatever, pack that squad out a little bit and just get a few more bodies in. Definitely, especially with these injuries coming on now. Mm-hmm. Tom, 7 minutes into the second half, Harrogate not been up to a lot. Suddenly they've scored, and it really did feel like it came completely out of nowhere. Just a really good cross, and it's a good finish, but it felt not as bad as Swindon, but felt certainly like it was avoidable, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you know, like you say, it was kind of out of the blue. It was kind of out of nowhere, but at the same time, we sat at half time. We're like, we needed to take at least one of those chances that we had in the first half, because you felt like there was a sting in the tail coming at some point. And yeah, that was it. I mean, look, it's a really poorly defended cross, I think. The guy who scores the goal, I don't even know his name, I'm not gonna lie, but he drifts in pretty much unnoticed, I think. And yeah, that's a good finish. Like, Eastwood can't do much about it, but yeah, like you're right. It's really not as bad as Swindon, but it's a real. Trying to find the words, but I suppose like a lapse in concentration, maybe. Not being switched on enough, not being active enough, really. And look, even at this level, teams at Harrogate can punish you if you're not at it. And yeah, it's just a really lazy, sloppy goal. The sort of goal that we're assured Neil Harris teams don't concede, although it is starting to happen quite frequently, unfortunately. But yeah, look, you know, it's an avoidable goal. I think it's a frustrating one to concede, and if Harrogate had been like banging on the door, it'd been like a more even game. It probably doesn't feel as bad as it does, because until that point, I don't think that they even registered a shot. I'm not even sure. It might have been their first shot of the game. So yeah, a difficult one to take.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, after that Swindon, you're really hoping to see, I guess, a response from United, right? A few changes made. So obviously Kai left, and your friend of mine, Elias Kachunga, came on. Gibbons came on for Bennett, also quite an interesting change to have made. And then obviously Pelly came on for McLaughlin. I felt like McLaughlin had probably his best game for us. None of those subs that have come on have really changed the game or stood out certainly for the right reasons anyway.
No, it's interesting you say that about McLaughlin. I kind of felt like he was fairly absent, but different views for different people. I think it kind of just shows how glaring our lack of depth and kind of adaptability is, really, those changes. I think, you know, pretty like for like with each change. I think Gibbons did a bit on the right hand side, but basically just kind of was replicating what Bennett was trying to do with limited success. With Ben Knight in front of them, I think they were really struggling to get much kind of purchase and get forward too much, and when they did, balls were, you know, going ricocheting back off said crosser, or, you know, going too long. I think we were just a bit too disjointed in the second half, and we huffed and puffed a bit, but I think it was pretty poorly managed game from Cambridge United all the way through the second half. You know, we spoke about, you know, being 1-0 up and it being a dangerous lead, and then Harrogate scoring in the 75th, but the fact that they scored 5 minutes into the second half and we managed to get through the whole of the second half and just not really put them in any bother. You know, the balls flashed across the box, a couple of, you know, half chances there, but really we didn't put enough pressure on, and I think the changes were kind of regimented and a bit obvious. We were talking about, Neil Harris's kind of mindset of being quite rigid and not particularly flexible and not changing the system even when it needs to be. He seems completely allergic to using, any of the younger players. Not that I'm suggesting that necessarily that would have been a better option on Saturday, but he didn't, and he doesn't ever seem to think that that's the right option to do. So when you've got two young players, forward-minded players on the bench, and they're basically never going to get used, you're suddenly reduced to a four-man bench, and they're the four substitutes that are going to be used. So I think that kind of makes it even more pressing that we get more bodies and names through the door if Neil Harris is going to refuse to use players like that. And yeah, I think Pelly Ruddock came on and yeah, must have been a tough time to come on, but kind of floated about a bit, never really got into the game. I think Brophy was invigorated by the substitutes coming on and was the only one who kind of picked up a bit when they came on, but the rest of them didn't really connect with that or weren't on the same kind of energy wavelength at all. So yeah, I think Cambridge United really were quite poor in the second half and didn't really deserve anything from it. Probably on balance, they deserved to win the game as a whole, but really the whole second 45, they were very poor. And Michael Morrison going off or not, there should be enough quality and conviction in that team to win that game comfortably, even if we concede in the 50th minute and they get back to 1-1. So yeah, not impressed by the effort from United yesterday in that Saturday in that second half, and not particularly impressed by the changes, although Neil Harris, whoever's fault it is, there isn't anyone else there to bring on. So yeah, I guess that's how it's going to go unless we get more names.
Yeah, I guess that's the issue, right? I mean, Tom, you mentioned it earlier. Obviously out. He was unwell, so missed making the bench. But did we actually miss Lofty? Did we need Lofty?
Yeah, I think so. Well, we missed a centre forward. We missed a number 9. I suppose at the moment that means it would be Ryan Loft that we missed. Yeah, I think like he's just a battering ram, isn't he? And it feels like there's going to be a lot of games this season where they are at times going to be quite low quality, going to be quite low margin, not loads in it, where the onus is going to be on us to try and find a way. And I just think given, in almost whatever format it is or whatever shape it takes, just giving it, your opposition something different to think about is sometimes not a bad thing. So, yeah, I think we did. And I think Swindle was absolutely right. Unfortunately, like the people that we could bring onto the pitch, like I think Pelly Ruddock's going to be a great player for us, and still back that he's an incredible signing for us at this level. But I'm not convinced he's like a game changer, if that makes sense. He's the sort of player who probably raises the level of your team if he's involved from the start, but is he going to come on and do something spectacular and win you the game of football? Probably not. And obviously that's shown. And clearly there's still a bit of work to be done on his fitness, I think it's fair to say. And obviously, yeah, I mean, look, we can sit and rant and rave as much as you want about Kachunga, and trust me, we did it yesterday. Put the world to rights about it. I mean, it's such a frustrating one because I mean, I think the most frustrating thing with Kachunga is that you just expect better. Of a guy who's played Premier League football, Championship football. Obviously played in obviously in Germany for a long time as well. You feel like there has to be more to come, and it's just like with like Apre, for example, right? Even if he finished yesterday, hasn't scored, like he's run himself into the ground, and you're like, he's really putting a shift in, and that goes for a few of them. Obviously, you spoke about Ben Knight, who maybe didn't have his best afternoon, but I think for the most part, they're a hard-working squad, which is obviously good to see. I mean, I don't think like Kachunga's never really broken sweat when he's played for us. I can't think of many occasions where he's really like you feel like, cool, he's put the burners on there.
That's what I said in the Swindon review pod. I don't think I have ever seen him break into a sprint in my life. Like if someone was chasing him down the street with a crowbar, would he still jog? I have no idea.
I mean, this is a guy who's played at like really decent levels, and he's played for some really big clubs throughout his career. And he's earning, probably by our standards, pretty good money, you'd imagine. He's been here for a few years. And I can't think of I think there was probably like a 3 or 4 game spell when Harris first came in a couple of years back where he looked pretty good playing next to a Hadmay. Other than that, I can't remember it. Like, I mean, we're going to talk a lot this season about, finding a way and turning ones into threes and all that sort of stuff. if the answer is Kachunga, I'm not sure what the question is because he's not the sort we've seen it all before. What's the point? Like why persevere with it? The guy doesn't contribute on a regular basis. I'm not just saying we don't sponsor anymore, but it's true. you know.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, yeah, he's getting enough bullets. You've got to hope, I guess. We just see a bit of a change of thought process, or I don't know, just put a shift in, mate. Make it make it more obvious, you know. Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens on that character arc, I guess. We'll get on to the post match section, I guess. I think firstly, Swindle, you touched on it earlier, but a few boos actually, a bit of discontent around the ground at the full time whistle. Is that a bit? Is it a bit premature? Is it a hangover from relegation? Is it completely justified? Like, where do you sit on this?
Yeah, I'm usually quite kind of anti-booing and all of that, but I can completely empathise and sympathise with people because last season was such a slog and it was awful, and we saw such terrible performances. I think back to that, losing to Rotherham, who hadn't won away in about 700 days in the 92nd minute when a guy scored a header from the floor. We had to watch absolute dross last year. Dross on dross, and there's been this kind of real ethos around the club about making this into a positive thing, and we're going to come back after this relegation, and we're rebranding, and we're getting rid of all the dead wood, and then suddenly they retain people you'd expect to go, and vice versa, and then they bring in a few people. But I can completely understand, we're being fed a kind of narrative, and then you turn up and you see a pretty accomplished first performance at home, getting over the line, getting that 1-0 win, and then a tough to witness loss away from home, against a team that we really could have beaten that day. And then, we're coming into this game. There's still positivity before the game on Saturday. Everyone round the ground, there's a buzz. We start that first half, great guns, and we should have been more than 1-0 up. But just to come out and be so gutless in the second half after conceding an early goal and then just not having the wherewithal to do anything about it, I completely understand. That second half seemed to last like 3 hours. It was just such a slog, and United offered very, very little, and people's frustrations were bubbling the whole way through that half after conceding so early. And then also the end to the game, that last 6 minutes of added time, you think, right, come on, United, make something of this, a poorly taken corner, and then suddenly it's Harrogate who are pushing for the winner. So you can completely understand that people have just really had enough. And as you say, a hangover from last season, but all of those people who got a hangover from last season paid a lot of money to go and watch Cambridge United last season and got very little for it. And we're down a league now where we should be winning more and have aspirations. And, suddenly we're 15th or whatever, and we're travelling to a team on Tuesday who still haven't lost this season. So I think there's got to be some understanding towards the fans that frustration, whether it's directed at an individual or not, is actually directed at the whole team, and the kind of frustration at the situation we found ourselves in, because we were told we wouldn't be found in a situation like this with a light squad. But here we are 3 weeks in, and we have a very light squad, and we've dropped points at home to a team we should be beating. It's no disrespect to Harrogate, but we should be aiming to beat Harrogate Town at home, undoubtedly.
Tom, Neil Harris described a lack of calmness and said we were ragged in the second half. He also cited losing Michael Morrison meant that we lacked leadership. Just to offset that, 7 of our starting 11 are age 26 or above, and between them they have hundreds of Football League appearances, including Don Ball, played in the SPL for Rangers, 90 games in the Championship for QPR. I know that doesn't automatically make you a leader, but I guess how do we feel? He also referred to himself in the third person several times and said that Neil Harris teams do not do this, that, or the other, concede goals like that, do football matches like that. Is that a bit of a concern in August that we're getting some of this narrative and not much, if any, accountability, I guess, taken inwardly?
A little bit. And I think with certain parts of our fan base that are really great already. And that's fine. I think we've spoken at length over the last 6 months since Harris came back, and I think generally speaking we're all very, very happy to have him as our manager, and I think probably he's the best person for the job. I will say that sort of stuff is going to wear very, very thin quite quickly, because it's just going to become a cliche, isn't it? It's become almost like a parody. I mean, I'm not really having that losing Michael Morrison can have such an impact on us, or it shouldn't do. You know, I get that he's the captain. I get that he's the senior player in the whole squad, really. But I mean, you're absolutely spot on, Casper. You know, I'm looking at Purrington, who's won promotions before. I'm looking at Don Ball, who, as you rightly say, has played for big clubs at high levels. McLaughlin, even I think he was captain at Newport last season. Kai could lead by example. Kel Watts, Eastwood's experience. There's plenty of players in there that can pick up the mantle and show a little bit, and they didn't. And look, for the time being, I think I'm fairly content overall with how things are going. But I will say that sort of interview and that sort of quote of we don't do this, we don't do that, and it's happening frequently. You're like, I'm not really buying it too much. But yeah, that's a little way down the line. I think and again, like we do have to caveat it all, because we are speaking almost as if we've been gubbed, or Harrogate have come and done a real job on us. Like, we got a point still. It's not the end of the world. Like, League Two is going to be a very tight division. Unfortunately, it's going to be a season where there's going to be afternoons where you do come away from there, be intensely frustrated, because probably more often than not, we are going to go into home games as the favourites, and we're unlikely to win all of our home games, right? So there's going to be some frustrating afternoons to come. So strap in for that. That'll be a laugh. But yeah, I think you're right. And you know what? Like Swindle was saying it earlier on about a lot of talk and a lot of discussion around a change in culture, a change in mentality, and that sort of stuff. If I'm manager of Cambridge United and I'm putting loads of emphasis and loads of talk into how we're going to change the mentality, change the ethos around the place, and Kachunga's still getting minutes, I'm thinking it's kind of a little bit contradictory, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's absolutely spot on. And I'd agree. We need to remind everyone and ourselves, 3 games into the season, it is a point. A point is progress. Fortunately, League Two, about the top third of the division get to compete for something at the end of it. So you should still be hopeful we should make up those numbers. Right. Let's wrap up on Harrogate. That's enough of that. It was better than the last time we played Harrogate, which is definitely true. Haven't even spoken about that. Before we talk about Colu, let's talk about the coconut tier for all our nutters out there. We got some new content coming this week. So we got a mailbag pod dropping for you guys. And then 2 stats articles from Ben Griffiths, our resident statistician. If you still haven't subscribed, you probably should. Go to undertheabbeystand.com, hit subscribe, and it all gets pretty self-explanatory from there, to be honest. £5 a month. So about the current prices, you can get a pint for that now, because you can go to the Old Spring between 5:30 and 6:30 on a Saturday after the game, and you can officially get it. So you could spend it on a pint, or you could do both. How's that? This is a decent plug.
That was good.
Right. Yeah,
I enjoyed that, mate. I don't know if you're coming to me for validation on it, but
yeah,
yeah,
I just always looking to you for validation, mate. Validation and then training tips for the half marathon. I'm going to absolutely whoop you in March.
There is absolutely no chance. I'm telling you right now, there is absolutely no chance.
You bet me £1,000. You actually forced Julian to witness you betting me £1,000 yesterday that you will beat me in the Cambridge half marathon, which is punchy.
I'll say which is punchy a little bit.
We're going to see how that works out. Swindle will be running as well, but he'll be miles behind both of us, so don't worry about that.
I'll see you at the pub.
Yeah, that. Which pub, Swindle? Should we go to the Old Spring?
The Old Spring.
That sounds good. Right, Colu, Tom, 1,500 odd, almost probably. Cambridge United fans making their way on Tuesday night, not including me. I'll be in Lake Como. That sounds like a good upgrade. Always good to watch us under the lights, I think. Tom Walker, talk me through your favourite memories. I've put plural, which is optimistic. Favourite memories and or single memory, maybe, of Colu.
I'm thinking Harry Darling late bicycle kick to win the game. Yeah,
6 years ago today, day of recording, is the anniversary.
An absolutely dire 0-0 draw there, I think, on New Year's Day a few years back. And I watched us get absolutely gubbed early on in the season. I think that was when Derry was manager, maybe.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about dark times, we can talk about dark times, mate.
We can get much darker. It gets a lot darker.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a theory about our away followings and sort of how it correlates to our results. And I think our absolutely peak away following for like a good result is probably knocking on like slightly under 1,000.
It's about 1,100 or something. Yeah, 900.
Yeah. Whenever I see that we've sold sort of north of 1,300 tickets, I'm like, I've seen this one before. Very, very rare that correlates into a good result.
Ipswich away though, mate. That's
Yeah, yeah.
it can be done. It can
The
be
good thing
done.
is like they do stand out when they happen
This
because
is
they're
true.
quite enjoyable. Newcastle, I suppose, allegedly.
Well, we did score, yeah,
Yeah.
supposedly. Walker, am I right in thinking that day at Colu, Harry Darley's bike, you got on a train and left Colchester, and then somehow 2 hours later you arrived back into Colchester? Is that a thing?
I don't want this put all on me, right? I was with other people. It wasn't just me. And we were all as surprised as each other. I'll be honest. Yeah, when we spent about an hour on the train and then had the next station is Colchester, we were like, what the fuck has happened here? Yeah, then we went for a very, very late curry in Cambridge when we got back. And that was, yeah, a good day out, actually. Just slightly longer than we'd anticipated because we yeah, I don't know, do you know what, I don't want to try and piece it back together, but I just don't know how that could have happened. I can't even like fathom in my mind the logistics of trying to leave Colchester and ending up back there. Maybe there's like a German word for it, I don't know.
Call it like the Hotel California, maybe.
You're so much better than that.
That's no,
that
I really
bad.
don't think I am. I think that's for on the spot, mildly hungover. I think that's as good as it gets. To help us preview this game, Swindle spoke with Aaron from Beyond the Bar Side.
Right then, news fans, I'm joined by Aaron from Beyond the Bar Side. Aaron, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Nice to speak to you, mate.
Yeah, you too. It's been a long old summer, but we're back and we're back in League Two. How was Colchester's summer, and any big signings that you made over the summer?
Yeah, I mean, I personally think the business has been quite good over the summer. There were a few rumblings over the last few weeks on X that the Cowley brothers weren't being backed. We've made 9 signings over the summer, so I think we have been backed ever so slightly. I think the marquee signing that we've brought in is Ben Perry from Northampton, who played 17 games in League One last year. We got him from Nottingham Forest. He was on loan at Northampton last season. Northampton inquired about bringing him in permanently, and by all accounts, we offered a better deal to Nottingham Forest, and he dropped down to League Two. So I think that's potentially our best signing of the summer. But there's been a few. We signed Dominic Gape, who's sort of well travelled and well seasoned within League One and League Two, although he hasn't played yet. Will Goodwin we've signed on loan, who unfortunately is injured. Jaden Williams has come across from Tottenham Hotspur. Jack Tucker's joined us permanently after being on loan last season at MK Dons, and we've also signed Josh Powell on loan from Nottingham Forest again, and Kane Vincent-Young's re-signed after joining us last year too.
Very good. Sounds like a good haul. We're quite envious from a Cambridge point of view. We've not had quite the same success in the window yet, but plenty of time to go. What do you think, really, from a fan's point of view, but maybe the club's point of view, is the aim for Colchester this season? Where do you think would be a good achievement to finish in the league this season?
Yeah, so there's been a little bit of disparity between where Robbie Cowling, our owner, sees us and where he feels the budget sits within the League Two sort of hierarchy, and where the Cowleys want to finish. The Cowleys want promotion, and Robbie Cowling feels that maybe mid-table would be a bit more realistic. I personally feel we're in with a shout of the playoffs. I think we can sneak in there if we get a run of games together. Last season, we came very, very close. We had a few injuries and a few suspensions during the run-in, and we just ran out of steam. But I think if we could potentially pick up 1 or 2 loans within this window, before the end of this window, and just add a bit more depth, we could potentially sneak a 7th or a 6th.
Yeah, maybe slightly similar to where we're going to be. I'm not quite sure that anybody knows at Cambridge where we want to finish or where we should finish, but yeah, we're getting to grips with that at the moment. Looking at this season, then it's been a solid start to the league season for you, unbeaten, 2 draws, and then first victory on Saturday. Talk to us a bit about that victory at Shrewsbury. How was that game?
Yeah, so it was a lot more positive than the first two games. Oldham and Tranmere set up very, very well defensively, and they were very, very difficult to break down. Shrewsbury were a bit more open. Obviously, they're a side that are a bit lower on confidence than the other two teams. They've not started the season very well. I think it was they'd conceded 7 goals within 3 games, so we were going into it maybe expecting to be on the front foot and go for it, and that was pretty much how it ended up. We were privileged to get Samson Tavide back starting, which I think will be a very key thing for us this season. If Tavide stays, there was a move to Luton that got pulled right at the last second. What mind frame he's in, I don't know, but he came back, he played well, and he scored a goal. And Kyrese Lisby came on within the last sort of 20 minutes or so and delivered the killer blow. So, yeah, a lot more positive, completely night and day to the first two league games. So, yeah, hopefully onwards and upwards.
Absolutely. So you've mentioned quite a few names already of players who we might be able to look out for, but could you give us like an idea of maybe the key player for you fans to look out for, and maybe also a little bit about your style of play and how we can expect Colchester to set up on Tuesday?
Yeah, so we've set up in a sort of 4-2-3-1 type formation. A lot of the way we set up hinges on Jack Payne, whether Jack Payne's available to play. If Jack Payne is available to play, we play the 4-2-3-1. Payne plays in the 10, and he is very much the key player that our creativity sort of comes through. He's that creative outlet within the attack that gets us the goals, really. And I think that was evident against Shrewsbury. He hadn't played the first 2 games. He comes in against Shrewsbury. All of a sudden, we score 2 goals. So if he's fit, that I think that's how we'll set up. We'll set up with Payne in the 10, and we'll set up with Tavide in the 9 role. Out on the wing, it's been a little bit more sort of inconsistent. He's rotated it quite a lot. I think Kyrese Lisby potentially comes in to start on Saturday. He had been coming in off the bench, although he started at Oldham, but that was in more of a centre forward role. And I feel that the Cowley's hand was forced there because there was an injury to Will Goodwin, there was an injury to Jack Payne, Samson Tavide wasn't fully fit, so it was all a bit trying to make the best of the squad that we had. So I can see Kyrese Lisby coming in on one side and Aurora Edwards on the other side, who towards the back end of last season was probably our most effective player going forward. So that's the forward line. I think our strength this season has been the back four. We've got a centre defence partnership of Tom Flanagan and Jack Tucker that have worked really, really well. Jack Tucker in particular has come in. He wasn't a regular starter for us last season, but he has settled into the role brilliantly, and he's got a good relationship with Tom Flanagan, and I can expect them to carry on as they have been. And then the fullbacks, Josh Powell played really well on Saturday. He also came in against Oxford in the League Cup and gave a good account of himself. And then we've got Rob Hunt, who has a promotion in him with Leyton Orient too. So
Yeah, interesting stuff. Be interesting to see how the game goes then. If I was to push you, what do you think? How do you think the game's going to pan out, and what's your prediction for the final result?
I think personally, it's going to be potentially a bit more positive than the first 2 games, purely because just from looking at how you guys have set up, you're a bit more attacking than Tranmere and Oldham. I don't expect you to come and park the bus, so to speak, although they had their moments going forward. I expect you to be a bit more positive and sort of take the game to us a little bit, which gives us a lot more freedom going forward to potentially hit you on the counter attack. So I expect both teams to be quite positive. I expect both teams to score. Obviously, you guys have conceded a few in the first few games. I think potentially we'll look to exploit that. But I think you guys are also gonna get a goal as well. So I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll be an exciting game with two teams going for it.
Brilliant. And if I had to push you for a final score, what do you think it's going to be?
I'll go 3-2 Colchester.
Love that. Yeah, a bit of a goal fest. Love that. Well, listen, Aaron, thanks for joining us.
No problem, mate. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Swindle. Thanks, Aaron. Swindle, 2 draws and a win for Colchester so far. You mentioned it earlier. They are unbeaten. They've also played quite, well, 2 hard teams, Tranmere, Oldham, and then maybe slightly less so in Shrewsbury. But that's a good away win for them on Saturday at Shrewsbury. It's going to be a tricky game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it could be a tough ask going there. I think they'll be happy to get that first win under their belts. They'll want to keep the unbeaten streak going, and it's always a difficult place to go. And as we've spoken about already on this pod, home form in this league is massive to kind of keeping you up in that top third of the division and being where you want to be at the end of the season to compete for promotion, whether it's automatic or otherwise. I think they've got quite a good squad. I think players to look out for. I think Kyrie's Lisby is going to get a lot of goals for them this season, son of Premier League great Kevin Lisby. And I think he'll get a load of goals.
I think that's a bit strong. Premier League great Kevin Lisby.
Premier League great Kevin Lisby, who scored a hat-trick for Charlton against Liverpool to beat them 3-0. I think that makes him a Premier League great, mate.
I don't know. I think in the corridors of history, I'm not sure Kevin Lisby quite makes it a Premier League great for me.
Well, I'm sorry, Kevin, if you're listening. I know he's a member of the Coconut tier.
He's still playing.
Who is Kevin Lisby?
He's still playing. He's 46. He's playing in the National League. Who's he playing for?
Is he playing up front with that really old guy?
For Cray Wanderers.
I think he's playing for Cray Valley Paper Mills, mate.
Ah, right. Wow. I think. Anyway, yeah, regardless of how good Kevin Lisby was, his son's already got a couple of goals this year, and I imagine will be up there with their top scorers. I think they're going to be they'll fancy going for us, I think, on Tuesday. So could be a tough evening out, and as we've said already, we've got an interesting history there. But yeah, well followed, which will be good. And I think through the absolute deluge of shit last season, we were still very well followed away, and I think that the club will appreciate that, and hopefully can appreciate it with some good away results, because Swindon was a lot for people to go and see us be on the wrong end of a 3-2 defeat there. So hopefully a bit of repayment for the fans.
Dynamic pricing for you, Tomo. You went to Oasis. That was dynamic pricing. You said you had a good time there. So by that logic, you're surely gonna have a good time in Cole, you.
Yeah, it was remarkably dynamic pricing by the time we managed to get around to get tickets for Oasis as well. Yeah, so I'm really gonna need to win this bet with you, Casper. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not really sure I can wait until March for it either. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, it should be good. I mean, it's a tough game. Like, make no mistake about it. I think we've talked a lot about the level of League Two in the past few weeks, which I think generally is quite poor. I think worse than the last time we were here. But Colchester away is one of the hard fixtures in the division, right? As you rightly said, it started quite well. They pose threats, well managed as well. Like, Danny Cowley teams, I think, a very tough setup. Well, and yeah, I think it's one of those which you file very much under even before kind of going into it. Take a point and move on. Unlike Saturday, obviously, but yeah, I think it's a tricky fixture. Like, I can't imagine there'll be too much activity. It's probably not enough time really to get more bodies in before then, and that's going to leave us quite light. Obviously we're hoping that maybe Lofty can make his comeback. But other than that, obviously, if we're missing Morrison, we're missing Kai, we are a little bit short.
Yeah, I mean, we're really short, right? Swindle, he's absolutely hospital pass for you. Give me a starting 11, or give me assuming no Morrison, assuming no Kai. Right. Your man Catch has to start, doesn't he?
Well, I think let's go from the back. Eastwood is a given. I think
solid.
Our back four picks itself. I think Purrington. Well, actually, I'm not sure it does. Actually,
Such a cop out. This is great.
No, I think it's going to be
Purrington Bradshaw ? Is worth having.
Yeah, I think he'll probably go for Purrington, however you say it again. With Watts and Job, but then I think he might go Gibbons, and play Bennett further forward like he did in the week. Yeah, there isn't a world where Catch doesn't play. I wonder if Ben might he might bring Ben Knight more central, like he did in the first game. This was spoken about on Saturday, where Ben Knight was much more effective, kind of central rather than out wide. So maybe bringing Ben Knight in there, but again, it's kind of what shape you play, really. I wasn't bowled over by McLaughlin, but McLaughlin and Ball together seems to work, and I don't think Pelly Ruddock has done anything to kind of bring himself into contention to start the game. So yeah, it's kind of dependent on the shape, but I think that 11 players will play with Appere up front. I don't know that Loft would come back in. He'd probably come back into the bench. I don't think there'd be, I don't think he'd ever come back in and start the game. If he wasn't well enough to play on Saturday, he's probably not going to be well enough to start on Tuesday, regardless of what the illness is. But we're so light. And if you look at the bench from Saturday and you think about the fact that not basically, Nascimento and Hoddle are both unpickable for, from the bench, let alone starting. You've got 4 other players in that with one or two to come back. So it really is just cutting your nose off to spite your face from Neil Harris. If he's not going to use those options, we need more experienced options through the door, because otherwise, then we're going to be found out time and time again to not have enough depth. So yeah, hopefully. I think the Gibbons Bennett thing will work fine, but it's not something we want to be relying on. I don't think Liam Bennett is going to suddenly become a marauding, right winger or right midfielder. I think it's kind of, and we shouldn't be compromising this point in the season for that, unless he comes out and says explicitly we're changing Liam Bennett's position. This is a kind of evolution of his footballing brain or whatever, which it isn't. It's just because we've got no players to pick. So we either need to, bring in a couple of experienced players or start playing a bit more youth.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Tom, predict how's the game going to go, and then give me some numbers.
I'll be honest, I'm not sure a game featuring a Danny Cowley team against a Neil Harris team is unlikely to be total football, put it that way. It's going to be a bit of a grind, I think. I'll be really interested to see if Pelly Ruddock can maybe start. Obviously, he started last Tuesday. It feels like now might be a good time to get someone of that quality in the team somehow. But of course, I totally understand if it's a little bit early. I think it'll be a grind. I think the emphasis is going to be on trying to keep a clean sheet, I think. And I think that'd be a really, really positive way to bounce back from, I think, slightly frustrating afternoon on Saturday. Yeah, I'm probably not going to do a great job of selling it. So apologies to anyone who's hoping to cash in on the dynamic pricing system. I could see it. I could see a total stalemate. I could see it being 0-0.
Okay, I mean, probably take that in the context, as you say, clean sheet.
Yeah,
I think you'd live with that, and the way at Cole U is platform, all that shit. Fantastic. Swindle, a prediction?
I think I'm going to go a bit more adventurous. I think I'm going to say 1-1. I think Appere will score again. I just think he's going to score in every game this season.
He's a good boy, isn't he? Such a good boy.
Such a good boy. But yeah, I think very similarly to Tom, I don't think it's going to set the world alight, in footballing terms. But I think it'll be good to if we can get a point on the road there and kind of try and keep a bit of momentum, or start a bit of momentum. I think that would be good. And yeah, a point gained at Cole U would be a lot better than a point gained at home to Harrogate. But yeah, let's look forward and manifest that positivity. It's a long season, 43 games to go before the Open Top Bus Tour or whatever they call it.
Very good, mate. I think we're going to get popped 2-0. See your positivity, and what's the opposite of raising someone? I've just got a weird feeling, and it's going to be fucking panic stations, basically. So whether or not I tune in from Lake Como, or I just choose to go out for dinner and have some pasta and a glass of wine, up for debate. Knowing myself as I do, probably will be tuning in because I'm such a loser. Right, that's probably enough podcast for today. Swindle, thanks very much.
Thank you, mate.
Tomo, well done.
Pleasure as always, mate.